Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something pretty fundamental, this idea that language is, well, more than just the grammar rules you find in a textbook.
That's right. We're looking at work, especially from Del Hymes, that challenges that traditional view.
His whole concept of ways of speaking, it paints a picture of language, not as this single neat thing, but as an organization of diversity.
hmm
So, our mission today, for you listening, is to explore that diversity. How do people actually speak, and how is that structured and meaningful? How does it define language, maybe even more than the official rules?
Well, to understand that, you kind of have to see where the old view came from. Hymes points out that a lot of linguistics grew out of what he calls the grammar genre. Think classical antiquity.
Like studying ancient Greek or Sanskrit.
Exactly. Scholars were looking at Homeric Greek, Vedic Sanskrit, these really prestigious texts. They weren't trying to capture every casual chat.
They were documenting the high status language, the language of important texts.
Precisely. They were codifying a specific cultural product. And in doing that, they created a standard. Hymes calls it an instrument of hegemony.
Wow. Okay, so it wasn't just describing the language.
No, it was setting up the correct way to speak. And that naturally pushed other ways of speaking to the margins.
So if you were, say, a farmer or a kid speaking differently, your way wasn't seen as having its own system.
It was just seen as a deviation. You were basically getting it wrong, according to that standard.
Okay, so the challenge then is, how do we actually describe the patterns people do use, the ones a community finds natural?
And that's where Hymes brings in the systematic analysis of style.
Style. Okay, how are we defining that here? Not like fashion, I assume.
No, much simpler, really.
I am.
In its root sense, it's just a way or mode of doing something, a way of speaking in this case.
But how do you analyze that systematically if it's not just about grammar rules?
Well, this is where work by linguists like Irvin Tripp and Gumpers comes in handy. They gave us tools to analyze style without constantly referring back to the formal grammar model. Two key ideas.
Okay, what are they?
First, rules of co-occurrence. This is about how different linguistic bits tend to cluster together.
Ah, like if you're being formal, you use certain words and maybe avoid slang, and those choices hang together.
Exactly. Certain vocabulary, pronunciation, even sentence structures, they select each other and group together to form a recognizable style. This finds the system in what people actually do.
Right. And the second one?
Rules of alternation. If co-occurrence is about features grouping, alternation is about the choice between different groups, different styles.
And that's where the social meaning comes in, right? Choosing one style over another says something.
Absolutely. It forces you to consider the context, the intent. Why this style now? This framework helps us understand things like bilingualism, code switching.
You mean like when someone mixes Spanish and English in the same sentence?
Yes, that's not random. It's a choice, an alternation, governed by social rules and carrying social meaning. Maybe signaling identity or shifting topic or who they're talking to. It's a meaningful part of their way of speaking.
Okay, this is getting interesting. So Himes says there are two basic kinds of difference in language, where traditional linguistics mostly saw one.
That's a key distinction. First, there's a referential difference. This is the basic job of grammar, telling hungry apart from dungaree.
The meaning difference.
Right. Linguists like Bloomfield were focused on this. They wanted to find what was structurally the same when, say, a beggar and a child both said, "I'm hungry." Find that core unit.
Okay, standard stuff. But what's the second kind?
The stylistic difference. This is where utterances with the same referential meaning can still contrast, purely based on how they're said. And that contrast carries social information.
Ah, okay. Give me an example.
The classic one is William Labov's study in New York City department stores. Remember that?
Vaguely.
hmm
Something about cert sounds.
Exactly. He looked at ride constriction, how strongly people pronounce the R after a vowel, like in fourth floor.
Right. He went into different stores.
Yeah.
Saks, Macy's, S. Klein.
Yes, stores with different social prestige levels. He'd ask a question where the answer was fourth floor. Then, and this is clever, he'd pretend he didn't hear and ask them to repeat it. Excuse me.
Ah, so the second time they'd be more conscious of their speech, more formal.
Precisely. And he found clear patterns. Clerks in the higher status stores used more R pronunciation overall, and all clerks used it much more the second time they said it when they were being more careful.
So that little R sound, which doesn't change the meaning of fourth floor at all.
It was carrying huge amounts of information about social class and the formality of the situation. It's pure stylistic difference.
It really shows that speaking is always a social performance, isn't it?
Always. And there's a neat principle here about which features get used for this stylistic work. It's about interdependence. A feature is available for stylistic use, like signaling emphasis or status, because it's not busy doing referential work.
What do you mean?
Take aspiration, that little puff of air after a P or T sound in English. If I say pin with a big puff or pin with almost none, you still understand the word pin.
Right, it's the same word.
Because aspiration isn't needed to tell pin from bin in English, we can use it stylistically. For emphasis, maybe surprise, maybe sarcasm.
But in other languages?
Like Hindi, exactly. In Hindi, aspiration is referential. It distinguishes words, so you can't really play with it for style in the same way. It's already got a full-time job defining meaning.
Huh. That makes you wonder about linguistic universals then, if we only look for features that change word meanings.
We might be missing the bigger picture. Heim suggests that features may be not seen as universal referentially. Things like aspiration, vowel length, pitch changes, reduplication. They might actually be universal in their stylistic function, their ability to add social meaning or emphasis.
Like the Wasco example you mentioned, the Native American language.
Yeah, that's a fascinating case. A purely structural phonological analysis might say, Wasco only needs 3 core vowels to distinguish all its words. Eliminate the redundancy.
Okay.
But Wasco speakers consistently use a 4th vowel, this low front A sound, mainly for rhetorical effect, for emphasis.
So if the linguist just cuts it out as redundant?
They're throwing out a crucial part of how Wasco speakers actually communicate. They're mistaking an essential stylistic tool for noise. It shows how reductive analysis can miss the point of language use.
Wow. Okay, so we have these features used stylistically, grouped by co-occurrence, chosen through alternation. How does this scale up to a whole community's way of speaking?
Hymes maps this onto 2 broad types of function. Structural functions relate to how the verbal features themselves are organized that links back to our rules of co-occurrence.
The internal organization of the style itself.
Right. And then use functions are about how these organized styles are deployed out in the world in social situations, linking back to the rules of alternation, the choices.
And these styles fall into bigger categories?
Generally, yes. We can talk about varieties, which are styles linked to stable social groups, think age grades, genders, social classes.
And registers.
Registers are styles tied to recurring situations or activities, like the register of a sermon or courtroom talk or talking to a baby.
Got it. And these styles aren't just loose collections of features, they have structure.
Definitely. You have stylistic modes, which are about consistent ways of using the voice, singing versus chanting versus ordinary speech. And stylistic structures, which are actual defined verbal forms like minimal genres, riddles, proverbs, greetings, curses.
You mentioned the Wolof in Senegal as a really strong example of stylistic modes being tied to social structure.
Oh, absolutely. In Wolof society, there's this fundamental contrast between what they call restrained speech and unrestrained speech.
And this isn't just a minor thing.
Not at all. It's deeply tied to social status. The nobility are expected to use restrained speech, while the griots, the professional oral historians and praise singers, use unrestrained speech.
And it's acoustically distinct. Like, you can hear the difference clearly.
Totally. Restrained speech is low-pitched, clear voice quality, soft volume, slow tempo. Unrestrained is the opposite. High pitch, often breathy voice, loud and fast.
The difference.
It reflects deep cultural values. For the Wolof nobility, excessive speech, especially loud, fast speech, is seen as potentially dangerous or demeaning. It's just not appropriate for their status. So the griots handle that kind of performance. The entire sound system is recruited to mark this crucial social division.
This really leads into the whole idea of a community speech economy, doesn't it? It's more than just the styles themselves.
Exactly. The speech economy includes all the available styles and features. Hymes calls these the means of speech, but also, crucially, the norms of verbal conduct, the rules about who can speak when, how, about what, to whom.
The social rules of talking.
Yes. And these norms can be incredibly persistent, sometimes even more so than the language itself. Look at the Ngoni people in southern Africa.
What happened with them?
Historically, due to various migrations and conquests, they actually lost their original Ngoni language. They adopted the language of the people around them.
Okay, so they speak a different language now.
Yes, but here's the fascinating part. They kept many of their traditional Ngoni norms of verbal conduct.
You mean like rules for taking turns in conversation?
Exactly that. Rules about who gets the floor, how you interrupt politely, what topics are appropriate for whom. These interactional patterns persisted even after the language itself changed.
Wow. That shows the social system, the speech economy, can have its own history, separate from the linguistic code.
It really does. It underlines how deeply social values shape communication, right down to the wire.
Which brings us, I think, to maybe the most mind-bending example. The Yokuts language and how these norms can actually seem to override grammar itself.
Ugh, the Yokits case. Yes, it's a perfect illustration. Yokits is a language from California, and structurally, grammatically, it can form really complex words by stacking up lots of suffixes. 4 or 5 in a row is technically possible according to the rules.
Like the linguistic machinery allows it.
The machinery allows it, but the linguist Stanley Newman, when he was documenting the language, he tried creating some of these super complex but technically possible words.
And what happened when he showed them to his native Yokuts informant?
The informant understood them perfectly. They weren't nonsense, but they made him laugh. He called them grammatical monstrosities.
Monstrosities.
Yeah.
Even though they follow the rules.
Yes. Because the Yokuts community shared this strong cultural value and aesthetic preference for severe simplicity in speech. Brevity and directness were prized.
So even though language could make those long words,
They should not. The community norm, the stylistic preference for simplicity, effectively overruled the purely structural possibility. Those complex words felt wrong, funny, monstrous, even if grammatically sound by the book.
that just turns the definition of grammar on its head. It means a speaker's competence isn't just knowing the rules of structure.
It also includes knowing the rules of use, the stylistic norms, the community sense of appropriateness. What should be said, not just what could be said. Grammar isn't just the engine, it's the engine plus the driver's sense of how to drive properly in this town.
So the grammar we actually use is shaped constantly by these social values and aesthetic judgments.
That's the argument. It's not a fixed mechanism, it's dynamic. If Yokit's values shifted towards complexity later, maybe those words wouldn't seem monstrous anymore, even if the structural rules hadn't changed one bit. The grammar lives in the community's choices.
So recapping this whole deep dive, we've moved from seeing language as just formal grammar to seeing it as this rich tapestry of styles governed by social rules, choices, context. It really changes how you think about communication.
It makes language much more alive, much more integrated with social life. Himes even suggested that language change isn't random drift, but often reflects shifts in what people find desirable or important to say. Those values push the language in certain directions.
Which leaves us with a thought for you, the listener. Think about your own language use. Are there ways of speaking, even perfectly grammatical sentences, that just feel weird, awkward, maybe even funny or wrong?
Chances are you're bumping up against one of these powerful, often unconscious stylistic norms a community should that feels almost as strong as a grammatical must. What are the hidden desirables shaping how you speak every day?